like to welcome Bill Humphreys to the Shared Dial Show. And you are a seasoned cyclist, a author, and a public speaker, and you are known as the real bike guy. And so I would like to welcome you to the show tonight from Connecticut, Mr. Bill Humphreys.
Well, thanks, Cher. It's great to be here. It's great to be
Yes,
here. Yeah.
definitely, definitely. And we are going to cover a gamut of cycling and other issues tonight. And so where would you like to begin? I know we were talking a little bit about the cycling and kind of where it started and where it's going and where it's kind of ended up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of I've become a unofficial what you call historian from the perspective of the late part of the sport. And and I really tout that I'm very active with, supporter of the Hall of Fame and what that means. If you don't have a past, there is no future.
Mm,
And the sport's grown to the point now where, it's no longer a subculture like it was in my day. And
right.
it's open. We all joke like it's open to the public, and people are riding, and there's so many of them. It's just amazing. It's all walks of life are out riding bikes for all kinds of reasons, and I'm just, my point of view is, do they know anything about the history of the sport? And
Sure.
that's one of my things that I try to keep people involved with. And one instance would be right here. My friend John Howard, who is a three-time Olympian and my teammate in the Tour of Ireland and the World's Championships. John just completed a book on Major Taylor that, a lot of people that are riding bikes today don't realize that this was the first black world's champion of any sport, and it was 1889, 90.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow,
this is
that
a
is
black
interesting.
man who won
Right.
$35,000 racing a bicycle before the turn of the century.
Oh my God, that is
So,
amazing.
and
Right.
and and people like the famous athletes of today are just now learning about Major Taylor. They didn't know about him. They thought Jack Johnson, the fighter, was the first world's champion, and Major was incredible. And the book is just, John has written a great book. It took him almost 43 years to get that book done. And I've read all the books on Major Taylor, and this one called The Black Cyclone, uh, A Hero the World Forgot, is one of the best reads I've read of the four books I've read on Major Taylor. So that's just one example. At the turn of the century, and then I'll be done with the history part, you didn't go to a baseball game until the track was sold out. There were so many velodromes in the country, like even the New York Yankees. The Newark Velodrome hold 35,000 people. And when it was sold out, then you went and bought a ticket to watch the Yankees. That's how
Oh, right.
popular the sport. Yeah. Okay. So
Sure.
that puts it in perspective. Major Taylor and the top professionals of that era made more money than Ty Cobb or Babe Ruth.
Hmm. Yeah, and
So
people
that's
don't
how
even
big the
have an
sport
idea.
was. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. So,
exactly. Yeah, that's pretty sad, really.
well, a lot of things happened in the meantime. We had a World War I, we had the Depression and the advent of the automobile, and those things helped with the demise. And it goes in waves. Usually in an Olympic year, it gets a little bit more publicity. Like, in 72, it got some publicity. And then, of course, in 76, it got a lot of publicity. And then from there, it just kept on rolling with Greg LeMond winning the Tour de France three times and being Sportsman of the Year for Sports Illustrated. Then the public started realizing, hey, this is a legitimate sport. And then Armstrong, regardless of
Right.
how he ended up, he was, even Greg will admit that he helped the popularity of the sport.
Well,
So
of
it had
course,
it had quite a rise.
yeah, I mean, I remember watching because my brother's in cycling. That's how I met Bob, was through my brother. They used to race together. And of course, Bob was in the Olympics in 1976.
He
And,
was.
huh?
Yes,
Yeah,
I know Bob from then.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and I remember like the biggest thing for us was to watch the Tour de France with Lance Armstrong. I mean, that was just a thing for us to watch, and it was so exciting, like you say, regardless of, what the outcome obviously was at the end. But now it's just like, I couldn't tell you who was racing, who a bike rider is, who a, national champion is, or whatever. And I mean, I kind of am kind of disheartened by that because I was so into it at the time,
Right.
So I didn't know if it was just because I'm not into it now, or if it's just kind of a lost sport in general,
Well, there's a lot of things involved in the American. And for instance, you're right. The sport is in a lull in America. Road racing is just too expensive to
Hmm.
shut down the roads for a point-to-point road race or out in the country. The police bill alone can run, 35 or $40,000,
Right.
So that's hurting it a great deal, and it's even having some effect on the big European races, because they are getting expensive as well. But at the same time, so there is a lull, and like I watched a Greg LeMond interview the other day, and having a hero, having a rock star of his caliber, and it helps a great deal, and there hasn't been one since then. But
Right.
yes, but yesterday in France, there's the Paris-Nice race, an 8-day race from Paris to Nice, and two Americans were American won it, and another American was on the podium.
Really?
Yeah, so you know, but they have to go over there to race now. Those two guys
Sure.
will never race in America this year. There won't be a race good enough for them. But
Right.
but the other thing that's happening that's immensely important and popular for me and for a lot of folks is women's professional racing is blossoming and growing in leaps and bounds.
Oh, that's great. Uh-huh. That is
And
wonderful.
when I've read the history of how the women had a Tour de France in the 80s, and then
Mhm.
the organization let it go. It cost them money, and they didn't think it had a future, and they stopped it. And it took a lot of meetings and a lot of people, women, to get another meeting with the bastion of male, uh, you know, lifestyles in France to sit down with them and say, women have got to race this Tour de France again. And last year was the first year in many years that they had it again, and it was outstanding. And it's back again this year. But there's also a whole European circuit, and there's two US based women's professional teams living and racing in Europe full time right now.
Oh my gosh, that is wonderful to hear, Maybe that'll take off now and it'll be a whole new thing, hopefully,
Yes,
you
yes. And
know.
and the other aspect that needs to be uh, that can help the sport immensely is track racing. If track
Mhm.
racing can be brought back properly, where you have a paid gate and you have different styles of racing other than just the Olympic styles, you have team racing.
Right.
And Bob would know that in a heartbeat. And that has the potential and the right program to bring the sport back uh, quite a ways, quite a ways.
Yeah,
It actually,
in fact, right here in Blaine, which is the next town over, they had the wooden track
yeah,
here, and
yes,
they tore it down just like 2 or 3 years ago. And wasn't it, I think, one of the oldest ones or one of the only ones left standing in the United States, and they tore it down just a couple of years ago.
right.
It's
Well,
kind
it
of
was
sad.
wooden, and yeah, it was wooden, but there are probably 20 velodromes in the United States now,
Right.
and many of them are in different states of repair. But the most active one is well, there's one right there in Detroit that's the Lexus Velodrome, and
Oh
he's
yeah, we
got it.
went there. Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's covered, and he's got a very successful program
Yeah.
there. And then there's Trexlertown with Bob raced all the time,
Right,
in
right.
Pennsylvania, and that's still. And then there's the indoor facility in Los Angeles that still has a good program. So they're still existing. San Diego has a track. They're still out there, but not to the degree that that they
Yeah,
could.
that
Yeah,
it was.
yeah,
And now you had sent me a video of you racing. It was it in Ireland in
yes.
73? What a great
I was
race.
Yeah, I was fortunate, and when I got on the scene racing, I learned how to race on the East Coast. And I was on the club that really had sponsorship, and they were determined to show the United States Cycling Federation through Raleigh bicycles on their own budget. This is how you race. You go to Europe and you ride stage races that are, 6 to 8 days long against the Europeans, and then you're strong enough to compete with the Europeans. But you don't just show up in Europe for the World's Championship one day, get your butt kicked, and come home every year. You go over
Right.
there and stay there and race and learn from them. So they took it upon themselves to send a team to the Tour of Ireland in 1973. And lo and behold, it was my first serious year of racing. And I ended up on that team with three other guys. And we showed up in Ireland for an 8 day, 750-mile tour of Ireland. And they didn't give us a chance in hell.
Really. I
Oh,
love
no.
the footage.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
classic.
classic.
Yeah. So we all did very well. And Phil Liggett, who was
Oh my
the
God, Phil
guru,
Liggett.
yeah,
Yeah. Right.
he was the commissar for that race.
Uh,
He was the chief official, and he himself had never seen a fully sponsored American team. And he interviewed us before the race, and he was polite, and we were a curiosity, but we really weren't expected to do as well as we did, and we did quite well. And Phil invited us to his race in England the next year.
yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah.
And now you're training are you training for the bike race coming up? Now that's pretty cool. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, if you here's how it works. In 1973, if you we rode from Ireland, we went to the World's Championships. John Howard, John Alice, myself, Mike Neal, Jim Akowitz. We're on the starting line at the World's Championships in Barcelona, Spain, and every European kid that the best in the Europe was there on the starting line, the amateur race. And if you had told me right then and there in 1973, Bill, in the year 1999, you will be racing the world's Masters Mountain Bike Championships, I
Right.
would have looked at you and said, what the hell's a mountain bike?
Right,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, at that point, right.
Who knew?
Yeah.
So, later on in life, I'm 55, I'm racing mountain bikes, and I go to the Masters World's Championships up in Quebec with my wife and my son, and I get third place, okay, in the 55 age group. So that was huge for me to get on the
Right.
podium and hold my son, who was like a year old, and put the medal around him. I mean, it's just la la land.
Yeah,
You
right.
can't get. So now, if you had told me then in 1999, Bill, in the year 2024, you're going to ride the gravel world's championships, I would have said, what the hell is gravel? Okay.
Right, right.
So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ride the world's gravel championships for masters in the 80 plus category. How can that even be possible? How
I was
can I
just
be
gonna
that old?
say, do you mind telling your age? Because that is amazing.
Somehow I turned 80. I have nothing to do with it. I will turn 80 this July. But a few years ago, I said, this gravel thing is becoming real popular, and I was good at the mountain bike, and I can't ride the mountain bike in the woods to the point where I'd like to, because if you go out alone and you fall down and get hurt,
Right.
nobody knows where you are, except now they have GPSs and your wife knows exactly where you are. But
Sure, exactly, exactly.
the gravel thing appealed to me, riding dirt roads, and I said, am I too late? Has that, is my day over, and can I really get involved with that at my age, at 75, 76? Can I really do that? And I decided, yeah, I'm not missing this one. I'm still blessed with some good fitness, and so
Good for you.
I got into the gravel thing, and in fact, Raleigh actually gave me a Raleigh gravel bike for my 75th birthday, and I started getting into it, and uh, I've
That
been
is
doing it now for
amazing.
2 or 3 years, and I just decided, well, you're 80 plus. Your first year 80, that's when you always want to enter. Your first year, you're in a new age group. In other
Right,
words,
right. Yeah,
75
exactly.
to 79, I'll be in the 80 group. I'll be the youngest year I'll ever be able to do it. you better do it now before everybody else turns 80 and, kicks your ass.
Yeah, really.
So that's my impetus. Plus, it's in Belgium. So that's the cycling guru
Wow.
capital of the world.
Sure.
And so that's my plan. I'm going to try and qualify in Arkansas in April, and then the event is in October. So
That's great. And I know you were talking, I saw you're on Facebook. You have a new it's called a Wahoo Element
yes, thank
technology.
you. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
so that's interesting.
It is challenging, is the word
Uh-huh.
for this old cowboy. I swear to God, one of the things that I didn't realize when you get into gravel, you've got to have a GPS on your handlebars so that when
Uh-huh.
you ride these events way out in the woods, you know where you're going. They can't just go out there and mark every single trail that you have to be on. So they require you to have a GPS. And that was my first lead in to the world of gravel. Like, it was a drawback for me
Oh, uh-huh.
because you have to upload the map into your phone and then into your thing on your handlebars. I mean, this is like rocket science for me.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
But anyway, I have struggled with that. And now I have a Wahoo Element, and they were nice enough to provide me with one in hopes that, that I could wrap my brain around it. And I've taken some classes and
That's something.
yeah, and in the coaching thing nowadays, the technology with the wattage and the kilograms and the power output and the recovery and all of that stuff, a lot of my old friends are like, Bill, you're too old for that. Just get on your bike and ride it.
Yeah, really. But you got to keep up with things, you have
I'm
to.
trying, I'm doing my best, and the Wahoo is helping me a great deal. That's all.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you had something to talk about too, the New England hemp and CBD.
Yes,
What's
that's
that all
another,
about?
well, I have some sponsors, and Element would be one. And I got involved with CBD products, just mostly the embrocation to rub into your bones, into your body.
Okay.
I don't take it internally as much as this really penetrates and really helps for soreness.
Does it?
Yes, it really does. And so I found this company that turns out to be really close to me and where I live. And these guys have something that penetrates really deep into your muscles. And so it's called New England Hemp um, Farm.
Right.
And I use their products, and I started to go into business for them. And I realized, that's a whole new business startup, and just put it as a hobby and a sponsor. And, you don't have to be in the business. And so I use that product all the time. And believe me, it's very helpful. And,
Oh, that's great. That's great.
yeah.
And
And,
I know you wanted to talk about some of the jerseys behind you.
yeah. Well, there's I've been blessed to have a great career, and I wasn't a race winner.
Uh-huh.
I could count the races I won on one hand, but I was a domestique. I was a worker, and I was surrounded by guys that were rock stars that had 2 or 3 Olympics in their legs. I was not
Sure.
about to compete with them, but they needed a worker. They needed a guy that could help them when they got in trouble. And I was available for that. So I got plane tickets to go places with them because I was a worker and I wasn't going to compete with them. I was going to try to help them.
Nice.
So
Nice.
as a
Yeah,
result,
definitely.
I got to go to Ireland because I was a worker. Then I got to go to the World's Championships. Then I got to race that other USA, the red and white one, the Tour of Newfoundland. That was
Great.
Butch Martin's first team, and we had a rock star. We had John Howard, Dave Chauner, and Wayne Stetina. I'm sure you know the Stetina name from the Midwest.
Uh-huh.
And then my
Definitely.
job was to protect them. So they needed a worker, and myself and Gromek and David Ware went up there. And then, I went to South Africa and raced, and then I went back to Ireland and raced. And all of this was, as a worker, as a domestique. And I raced all up and down the East Coast and the West Coast, Mexico and Canada. And, didn't win that much, but I
Got a
had a
real
great
life
time.
though,
Had a
exactly.
great time. Great time.
And you're a public speaker.
Yeah, and now I'm doing a little bit of that for bike clubs and any corporation. uh, I can apply what I've learned, my dedication, my discipline, my goal setting, and what you give up to get for your goals. I can apply that all to any situation, whether it be corporate or a cycling team or club, and just tell my story, and or I can adapt to whatever the situation is. And
Sure.
and that's been fun. And that started uh, with that really expanded when I did the book called The Jersey Project, which was the history of cycling jerseys in the United States and Europe. And I started doing book signings and speaking then, and that really brought out the history fact. And so now I do it, more and more towards developing my memoir, which I'm writing.
Yeah, before we go, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
when is tell us a little bit about that and what all is going to be in it, and are you going to be interviewing cyclists or
it's kind of um, I started just writing. I took notes for years and years. I have training diaries and so forth. And my dad said to me at one point when I was young, he said, you're not following any pattern at all. You know what I mean? Like
right.
he just said to me, obviously you're not going to be a West Point graduate like I wanted, you know.
Uh-huh.
But he said to me when I was like 21 and had already had like 18 different jobs, he said, "Are you writing all this down?"
Uh-huh.
And I'll never forget that because he knew that if I kept on going this way and I was keeping notes, that I was going to have a hell of a story. And it
Sure.
turns out I do have a hell of a story, and it's more than just cycling. And I started writing it about 3 or 4 years ago, and I realized, man, it's getting big, it's getting unwieldy. I'm plowing through it. There's so much cycling, and my life is so long, and I'm never going to get through it. And I took a break, and I started reading books on how to really write better.
Right.
And then I went back and cleaned it up, and then I realized you can't finish this book. It's going to be too big. It's going to be a Bible, you know.
Uh-huh.
So
Right.
so I found an endpoint, and I've got the chapters outlined, and it's going to be if I can write it to the level that it can be written at, and my writing is improving greatly. I think I've got a book that can sell beyond just the cycling audience.
Sure. Yeah, because you got a little bit of something for everyone. You have a
Right, right.
story about your life and people and the world, really.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's one of the things I sent you was this book that's out now that's No Ordinary Joe.
Right, right, exactly.
This is volume two, and it's profiles of 20 guys that raced during my era uh, that helped pioneer the sport. And I got selected in the first volume, and I was shocked that Joe Sailing said you need to put Bill Humphreys in this. And it wasn't because, and it was, it's not because I was a rock star and an Olympian. It was because I was a hard worker who raced everywhere, and what
Sure.
So I was honored to be in that. And when the author started calling me for information and stuff, I sent him this little story that I sent you about how old guys who got it done,
Sure.
and and he said to me, we already have a foreword by Vandeveld, but we have to put this in the book. This epitomizes the era that our book is all about.
Sure.
And I was honored to have my prologue
Yeah, you want
be
to read a
put
little
in.
bit of it?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
please.
Okay. Um, the the prologue is we decided to put our futures on hold with no thoughts for what are you going to do when you grow up? College, marriage, careers, kids were not for us. We had miles to put in, sponsors to find, and races to get to. It was a small world here, but we knew how big it was elsewhere. We had experienced elsewhere and we wanted more. Suffering through stages because our butts were so sore from racing day after day on rough roads in the rain and washing out our own shorts and jerseys in hotel sinks, they would still be damp when we put them on the next morning, was all part of the life we had chosen. Finishing too far down on certain stages meant getting to the hotel too late for a hot shower, and then four of us cramming into a small hotel room for the night. This was just part of the job, the payoff for making it to any kind of stage race in Europe, Canada, or South America. We had arrived. We were where the real action was, where the Euro kids were fighting tooth and nail for every wheel, every day, and no American was going to take their spot. We clawed our way up through the bunch, got our butts kicked, and came back for more. We took some wheels and we took some wins in the process. When we came home, there was another teammate to pick us up at the airport. No cycling blogs or mainstream press, no social media there to interview us. The sooner we adjusted to the real world, the sooner we could get an off-season job to be saving money for the next season. And then the nature of the sport is to just keep moving, never staying in one place, but always traveling to the next race. Then it's off season and moving into a new season with a new team and a new schedule. The years and seasons fly by and then it's over. We somehow picked up the pieces and found more normal lives, settled down, got jobs, and had families. And as the years went by, we began to wonder if what we did was real.
What a great ending to a great show. That is wonderful. Oh my gosh. Well, Bill, it was so nice talking to you. How
Well, I enjoyed it.
interesting.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And, I'm just blessed that I can still go out and ride my bike. I'm
I
just
know,
thankful
how
every day.
amazing at 80 years old for you to be still doing this.
And there's so many guys coming along after me. Believe me, there's so many guys like me out there that are just as fit as I am. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I bet you don't realize it that there are still so many, but it's so wonderful. And I cannot wait for your book and just keep us. I want to, hear about your race over in Belgium.
I will definitely call you long distance from
Yeah, oh,
Belgium.
but you know what? Yeah, you'll have to do a Zoom with me, And
All right.
you know what? Before I go, I wanted to mention my cup here is a sponsor of ours is Twin Cities Graphics, and they do my cup and they do t-shirts and jerseys and
All
they
right.
do keychains and shirts and everything. They're located right here in Circle Pines, Minnesota, and they're on my website, The Cher Dial Show.
All
And
right.
so people can go to the website and check them out, Twin Cities Graphics. And Bill, where can people find out more about you and your all things going on with you?
Well, I'm pretty visible on Facebook um,
The
and
Real
also
Bike Guy.
yeah, and then the realbikeguy.com has several pictures and a lot of updated stuff about me and Facebook I'm very active on and Instagram as well.
I love The Real Bike Guy. I love all the pictures on there.
Thank
And
you.
how did you get the name The Real Bike Guy?
Well, that's Dave
I want to
Chauner named
know.
me that we were at a stage race up in Canada. I was Nicky New Guy. I was brand new and I found myself on this team full of guys that were all veterans. And And Dave Chauner just said from out of the West, because the year before I had ridden my bike across Canada and from San Diego to the East Coast. And here I was 1 year later with all these rock stars. And
Uh-huh.
Chauner just said, and the bike guy rode in from the West and it stuck.
Oh, really? Isn't that something?
I've been the bike guy for 50 something years. Yeah.
Oh my God, that is so great. Well, once again, I would like to thank Bill Humphreys for joining us on the Cher Dial Show. And what a pleasure it was speaking with you. And I'm not joking. Please keep us updated on all the great things happening with you. And give us a call from Belgium. I can't wait to hear.
You got it. Thank you.
You can be a witness for the world. sayang